It's another summer afternoon at Thermal Mermaid, and today I'm going to show you 2 tips on how to incorporate goat milk into your favorite lotion craft formula, and you can turn a simple base lotion recipe into a rich, luxury, velvety goat milk lotion full of alpha hydroxy acids. Now I'm going to show you the basics on how to incorporate this ingredient so that it won't separate, and it will be in a healthy proportion in your formula so that it also won't spoil. But if you want my full recipe for exactly what I'm making here, and you're a member at cottagediy.com, then let me show you where to find it. Log into your Soap and Cosmetic dashboard, scroll down into the recipe directory, click on Lotions and Butters, then scroll down to Goat Milk Lotion and click on that. And that will take you to the page that will give you all of the material and tutorials you need for exactly this lotion formula demonstration that you see in front of you. Tip number 1. Let's start with our goat milk. Whichever recipe that you are using, the goat milk is a portion of your water content, and we want to keep our goat milk between 12 and 16% of the total amount of our recipe so that we can successfully preserve it without it turning rancid in the product. Typically with lotions and skin creams, we have to keep our additives to infused oils and actual cosmetic ingredients. We can't get too fancy with all the food and perishable additives like we can when we're crafting soap. But milk is something that we can work with as long as we're conservative with our amounts. When I've tested my milk cream formulas, I can get a full year's stability from a formula that falls somewhere between 12 and 16% with milk content. Now you might run across cosmetic corporations that use a lot more because they're definitely out there, and that's because they have the ability to modify their ingredients and also test stronger preservatives. There's a company in Europe that uses 100% whey in some of their skin formulas, and they have a shelf life of over a year. So it is possible. But that's not what we're doing in our cottage industry. So we need to keep our milk portions lower to adequately protect them with the preservatives that we're working with. Now that you've calculated your 10 to 16% and you've decided on the amount of goat milk that you'll be using, you need to blend this in with the water phase of your project. As you're warming your water to get it prepared to be bound with the oil in your project, you'll warm the goat milk alongside. Now you can use fresh goat milk, you can use condensed, and you can use powdered. All 3 of those choices are perfectly fine for this project. Just make sure that if you're adding it directly into the water, that you include the additional water that the goat milk would need to reconstitute it. For example, here's a demonstration of me adding in goat milk powder into my water phase. You have to remember to add the additional water as well. So if your formula calls for 22 ounces of water and 8 ounces of goat milk, you'll need to pour 30 ounces of water and then blend in an ounce of goat milk powder, which is the amount called for to reconstitute 8 ounces. Now goat milk is soluble in both oil and water, so it will dissolve just as easily in either your oil or your water phase. But to do this flawlessly, we need to add it into the water phase. And that brings us to tip number 2. Tip number 2. The success is in the temperature control. As your formula is warming the waxes and oils are melting, and the water is raising in temperature, the oil side is going to reach at least 170 degrees to melt down all of those waxes and stearic acid. But the water and goat milk need to remain lower so that the sugars in the goat milk won't caramelize. We want to keep our goat milk white and fresh, and that means we need to keep the temperature of the milk to 140 degrees. Now we also want these to be bonded in a close window from one another, so when the oils and waxes are completely blended, we're going to allow that mixture to cool down to 160, and the liquid oils in the mixture are going to allow the stearic acid to stay fluid just slightly lower than its melting point. When the 2 parts are blended, they need to blend at a temperature around 150 degrees to bond. We need the heat for the emulsifying wax to do its job. 150 is pushing it to keep that milk from turning tan, but if we can stay in that window for just 3 to 5 minutes, we're going to be just fine. So we'll pour the oil at 150 to 160 degrees into the water that is 140 to 145 degrees, and immediately blend for 5 minutes. Here we've achieved two things that the emulsifying wax needs to bind the oil and water. That's the correct temperature and time. Give that blend a good solid 3 to 5 minutes. And once you finish, you will have a bright white thin fluid that will look just like a bowl of warm milk. But as this cools and sets over the next 4 to 24 hours, your final product will be this silky, creamy body lotion that will have a perfect texture and it will not separate. Now remember, if you need help troubleshooting this formula, or if you have more questions, you can come visit us at Cottage DIY, go to the goat milk lotion page that I showed you in the beginning of this video, and post your question in the thread at the bottom of the interactive page. Now don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on your notifications if you want to catch the next soap, cosmetic, and lotion making tip to make your DIY crafting project perfect.